Hello, friends. We'd like to welcome you to another broadcast at Concord Union Church. We hope you will be encouraged by today's message you'll hear, and we hope that God blesses you. Now let's get right into today's message. And boy, she just sent a picture, and just boxes and mail everywhere. And she said, it's kind of overwhelming that you come in there and get rid of all those boxes and come in the next day and they're right back where they was at the day before. A whole bunch of brand new boxes. That's overwhelming, isn't it? It just never stops. And then we read the text here in Psalms 55 that, hey, he says, here in verse number 4, that my heart is sore pain within me, and terrors of death are fallen upon me. He said, fearfulness and trembling are come upon me, and horror hath overwhelmed me. He's being crushed and defeated and down and, boy, covered up. And then he says over in verse number 6, oh, that I had wings like a dove, for then I would fly away and be at rest. He's wanting rest and to be having rest, but he can't get away from it. And he said, oh, if I just had some wings. That is somebody that just wants to get away from it all, isn't it? You've been there, you've been overwhelmed. And boy, you just want to get away from everything, don't you? Boy, if I could just fly away. Boy, if I could just get away from it all. And boy, I see people that'll work 60, 70 hours a week. And boy, all of a sudden they say, I just got to get away. I got to go on vacation. I got to get away from here. I got to get some rest. I got to get away from here. And they'll go out and buy a $40,000 camper and take all that stuff with them. I got to get away from it. I got to get away from all this stuff. But then they'll go buy a camper and bring it all with them. Oh, if I could just get away. Overwhelmed. Oh, I just can't stand it anymore. Oh, I've got to get some rest. I've just got to get some relief. I just got to get away from it all. And man, then we go down to Psalm 61, and then he's sitting there, and he said, boy, from the end of the earth will I cry. Man, I'm thinking about from the end of the earth. Well, he's just all alone. And if you study that, it's talking about David when he's hiding in the wilderness and don't know if it's from his son, his own son, or maybe from Saul that was trying to kill him. And he's wandering out in the desert and out in the wilderness, and he's living in a cave and trying to hide from everybody. And then he says there in verse number 2, from the end of the earth I will cry unto thee when my heart is overwhelmed. He says, lead me to the rock that is higher than I. I'm preaching on this morning being overwhelmed. You got to get away from everything. Boy, then you say, boy, I'm just all alone. And nobody knows how I feel. Boy, it's just so overwhelming. I'm being crushed down. My spirit is being crushed. And nobody even knows. I wonder how many people would be honest with themselves this morning and say, boy, I've tried to have a good life. I've tried to be spiritual. I've tried to read my Bible. I've tried to get up and pray. And boy, it just don't seem like my prayers get off the ground. And when they do get off the ground, they don't even hardly get above the ceiling. Nobody knows how I feel. I'm all alone. And man, nobody understands me. And boys, there's just trouble one right after another. I'm overwhelmed. I want to get away from it. I can't stand it. Nobody knows how I feel. I'm talking about being overwhelmed this morning. Is that you? Well, would you be honest with yourself and say, boy, I'm just overwhelmed this morning? Well, there's some signs. There's the source and there's the solution. Everybody wants a solution, don't they? Can I tell you some signs of being overwhelmed? Look back there in verse number 55. Here's some signs. Are you ready? He says, my heart is sore pained within me, and terrors of death are falling upon me. You'll know some signs. Look at verse number 5. Fearfulness and trembling. Boy, sometimes just being fearful will make us overwhelmed. Have you ever noticed that in our country, and I don't see it anymore, but they used to have this terror threat. You ever remember that? Some of you taking it, that was probably before you was born, just to be honest with you. But they had it in different codes, and boy, green, boy, they wouldn't know, there was no threat. Boy, then they had yellow and orange, and then they had the danger. Boy, if you got it in red, buddy, it's just ultimate doom, right? You remember that? But it was almost like when it got up there, everybody went crazy, right? Because they were so afraid. And man, the spirit of fear was on them. Can I tell you what my Bible says over there in 2 Timothy chapter 1? That by the Spirit of the Lord doesn't put the spirit of fear on us. Our Lord is not to have the spirit of fear, but the power and love and of a sound mind. God doesn't want us to be so overwhelmed and so afraid and so scared of everything that's going to happen. God has not given us that spirit. He has given us not the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. And this morning, if you have a spirit of fear, everything is just going wrong. Oh, what are we going to do? God doesn't give you that spirit. I remember here just a couple, probably last year about this time. We had a meeting. Boy, there were some things that was going on, and boy, some things that happened out in our country, and boy, there were some people that got worried. And we had a meeting. We had a group come in here that was telling them what they done at their church, and if something happened, this is what they done. And boy, there's some people, some men in this group here that just got, I'm going to tell you, I think they was afraid. They may not say they was, but I believe with all my heart. I was in that meeting, I was listening to them, and boy, they said, what are we going to do? And I give them that verse right there. I told them, I said, wait a minute, boys. Don't be overwhelmed. We're serving a God. But we don't have to have the spirit of fear. Listen, I'm telling you, if you're worried about some things, and boy, fear is just into your life, you can't even see the future because you're so worried about what's happening now, and the spirit of fear has just gripped your heart. Let me tell you something. That's not of God, and God does not want you to live that way. Can I tell you this morning, God does not want you to be fearful of everything that's going to happen. Yes, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Yes, we don't know what's going to happen at the end of this service, but I'll tell you who does, and I'm holding His hand. Amen? What do we have to fear? I like what the president said one time in that famous speech. Hey, that we have, it was Winston Churchill said, we don't have nothing to fear but fear itself. Ain't that good? Why he's overwhelmed with a spirit. I'm just telling you the source of overwhelming, the signs of overwhelming. Look at fearfulness and trembling. He said, have come upon me. He said, oh, that if I had wings like a dove, that I could just get away. He wants to get away. He's all alone. Then look at Psalms 142. He says right here, I've cried unto the Lord with my voice, and with my voice unto the Lord did I make my supplication. I poured out my complaint before Him. I showed before Him my trouble. When my spirit was overwhelmed within me, then Thou knewest my path. And in the way wherein I walked, they have privately laid a snare for me. I told you over there in 55 that he wants to get away. 61, he's all alone. Then look here in verse number 140, chapter 142. There's no light at the end of the tunnel. There's no better. It's never going to get any better. He's overwhelmed. That's some of us this morning. Man, we just got to get away. Nobody knows what we're going through, and it's just a crushing down. It's a constant crushing down, and then we look at it and we see no end in sight. Oh, what are we going to do? Oh, there's no light at the end of the tunnel. It's never going to stop. 10 years from now, it's going to be the same. Hey, we're just overwhelmed with it. Can I tell you some of the passages in the Bible that's helped me? I want you to look at Numbers chapter 11. Numbers chapter 11. You don't have to turn there. You can look this up. But I want to show you the story of being overwhelmed. Sometimes when I'm a pastor and when I have a time of being overwhelmed, I read this right here so that it'll help me. Are you ready? Look here in Numbers chapter 11. Verse number 10, then Moses heard the people weep throughout their families, and every man at the door of his tent. And the anger of the Lord was kindled greatly. Moses was also displeased. And Moses said to the Lord, wherefore hast thou afflicted my servant? And wherefore have I not found favor in thy sight, that thou layest the burden of all these people upon me? Have I conceived all this people? Have I begotten them, that thou shouldest say unto me, carry them in thy bosom as a nursing father beareth the sucking child unto the land which thou swarest unto the fathers? He says in verse number 13, whence should I have flesh to give unto all the people? For they weep unto me, saying, give us flesh that we may eat. And he says, verse number 14, I am not able to bear all these people alone, because it is too heavy for me. And if thou thus deal with me, kill me, I pray thee, out of thy hand. If I have found favor in thy sight, and let me not see my wretchedness. You know what he's saying? All these children of Israel down there, he's leading all these people. Have any idea how many people there are? Anybody have an idea? Over a million. Close. Almost 2 million. Almost 2 million people. And they're looking to one man for something to eat. Moses is pastor over first Egypt. Baptist church. And they're wanting to know, hey, where are we going to eat, Moses? Man, what's God going to give us this time? And he's sitting there looking, he's pouring his heart out to God, and he's saying, man, God, this is too heavy for me. This is too much. Are these all my people? Which I ain't born all these people. Can I tell you what Moses is going through right here? He's overwhelmed, isn't he? He's so overwhelmed that he looks to God and says, God, kill me now. I can't handle it. It's too heavy for me. Boy, just get rid of me. Kill me now. Anybody feel like that? Man, it's too heavy for me. I can't bear this burden, God. Just kill me. Elijah, we said about this morning in Sunday school. I was in that cave from Jezebel. Boy, Brother David, he gave his testimony about David or about Elijah and Jezebel. And he had just won a great victory for God. I mean, he prayed down fire from heaven, and it licked up all the water and the altars, and he killed all those men. Had won a great victory to God. And then Jezebel says, I'm going to kill you, Elijah. And the next thing you know, we find him in a cave, depressed, overwhelmed. And you know what he says to God? God, kill me! He's overwhelmed. Jonah. I love the story of Jonah. Jonah goes down there to Nineveh. He's going to preach. He finds a boat, goes the other way, goes down there to Tarsus. And you know the story, he goes in the fish swallows him up. He prays, he goes down there, preaches to the Ninevites. Every one of them gets saved. The whole city has a great revival. Next thing you know, old Jonah's mad, sitting under that tree, boy, just pouting, depressed, and says, you know what? I know they was going to get saved. I know they was going to get right. He hated them Ninevites. He didn't want them to get right. He's sitting there under that tree just complaining, pouring his heart out to God. You know what he is? He's overwhelmed. Boy, I think of some mamas. Stay up, boy, take care of everything, and boy, trying to make sure the kids are all right, and the kids are disrespectful and hateful. Boy, they got to get them to school and to work and cook meals. And boy, they go to their husband and feel like their husband doesn't even hear them, doesn't even care. I think of a daddy, boy, that husband that's trying his best, and boy, he hates his job, and he hates work, and he don't like nobody that he works with, and then he comes home, and boy, it feels like nobody understands, and he's got a honey-do list about a mile long, and he ain't even got ready with the first thing, and the wife's already hollering at him. Overwhelmed. I'm thinking about a bunch of kids that, boy, we don't even have any idea of the struggles that they go through. Boy, mom and daddies are telling them one thing, and boy, the preachers tell them another. Friends are trying to tell them this, and the Holy Spirit is telling them another thing to do. Boy, it's just easy for them to get overwhelmed, isn't it? It just feels like their world is getting crushed down. Sometimes I don't think we understand how bad that some people have it, especially our teenagers. Austin Bradley, come up here for a minute. I want to give this illustration right here, okay? Come up here. Austin Bradley, come on. Make sure you got your shoes on. Come on. I don't know if that's what you're doing. I'm talking about overwhelmed, all right? These brothers right here, amen? Twins. All right, here's what I want you to do. I'm going to put this book down, okay? Now, what I want you to do, I want you to put your hand out like this right here, okay? Let's put your arm down. Now, Bradley, I want you to grab his hand. Open your hand. Both hands. Take both of them. And what I want you to do is I want you to pull Austin across this book right here, okay? Now, don't yank him, don't hurt him, but just, pull and try to get him across here. Now, Austin, you don't want to go across that book, okay? Are you ready? All right. Now, when I say go, now don't yank him, but just pull, just don't let him pull you across that book. You don't want to go across that book, okay? Are you ready? Go. Come on. Pull. Come on, pull, Bradley. All right, hang on. All right, now, let's just try that the other way around. Try it the other way around. You pull him. You pull. Bradley, you take his hand right here. You try to pull Austin across that book. Okay? That's the way we done it? You pull him.
I pulled him.
Okay. He's going to pull you.
He pulled me.
He pulled you. We're going to do it again, all right? Are you ready? All right, now, don't go across that book. Don't let him go across that book. Now you're going to pull, okay? I want you to pull. Grab both hands. We'll do it the same way again, okay? Now, what he's going to do is he's going to pull you, try to pull you across that, okay? Are you ready? All right, go. Go down, sit down, all right? Thank you. I'm telling you, folks, our teenagers are getting pulled by the world, and we don't need nobody pushing them. That's deep, isn't it? They're getting pulled by every direction. Man, they're getting pulled by the world. The enemy, it is our enemy, and the world is pulling them, and we don't need nobody pushing them. Boy, that's deep. Because they're overwhelmed. There's probably a lot of us that are just like that, isn't there? Boy, the world is just pulling down on us, pulling us as hard as they can pull. And boy, we're trying to fight. We're trying to stay in church. We're trying to stay rooted and grounded. And man, we're pulling back. But then somebody just comes by and just shoves us. I'm talking about being overwhelmed. Can I tell you, there's a solution to being overwhelmed. Everybody wants a solution, don't they? Amen. Well, wouldn't it be great if there was just a book that just give us all the answers to everything, right? We wanted to lose 50 pounds. Here it is, right here. Real easy. Boy, we want to make $200,000 a year. All right, turn to page number 3. Here it is, $200,000 a year. Well, if we had that book, how many would buy that book? Amen? It's the solution. It's a solution book. Can I give you the solution? Look here, I'm done. Luke chapter 11. Luke chapter 11. Verse number 38, the Bible says, that came to pass as they went that he entered into a certain village, and a certain woman named Martha received him into her house. She had a sister called Mary, which also sat at Jesus' feet and heard his words. But Martha was cumbered about much serving. Came to him and said, Lord, dost thou not care that my sister hath left me alone? Bid her therefore that she should help me. Jesus answered and said to her, Martha, Martha, thou art careful and troubled about many things. But one thing is needful, and Mary hath chosen the good part, which shall not be taken away. Well, when I read that story, you know what I see? I see two sisters, totally different. I see one sister, boy, that is, just troubled with every little thing. She's got to get everything just right. She's got to have the beans on the stove, and boy, she's got to do this, and boy, she's got to get this out of the oven and do all of this. And then we have the other sister, Mary. Boy, she's just focused on Jesus, isn't she? Boy, her attention, her thoughts, everything that she thinks about is about Jesus. Can I give you the solution? Martha is troubled. She's overwhelmed. Mary is just focusing on Jesus. You want to be not overwhelmed? Let me tell you what you need to do. Focus on Jesus. Quit worrying about every little thing. Well, don't be overwhelmed. Hey, why do we worry about some of the things that may not never happen? Well, we do, don't we? Can I tell you what the Bible says? Psalms 143. You don't have to turn there, but listen to this. He says, for the enemy hath persecuted my soul. He hath smitten my life down to the ground. He hath made me to dwell in darkness, and those that have been long dead. He said, therefore my spirit overwhelmed within me, and my heart is desolate. Verse number 5, here's the solution. I remember the days of old. You might be in a spirit right now where you're so overwhelmed, you're crushed, you're in a bad state, a bad spirit. You can't get no relief. You're anxious. You're depressed. You're angry. You're heavy. You're burdened. Whatever you're going through. Listen, we get that way sometimes. Hey, listen, you're not the first that's ever been overwhelmed. Moses was overwhelmed. He wasn't the first. Elijah was overwhelmed. He wasn't the first. We're not the first, and we won't be the last. So what's the solution? Just remember the days of old. You might be in a spirit of being overwhelmed right now, but remember a day when you wasn't. Remember a service when you come in church and boy, you had joy and gladness. Remember those days. He says, I will remember the days of old. He says, I will meditate on all thy works. And I muse on the work of thy hands. You know what he done? He sat there and prayed. You might be overwhelmed. When's the last time you said, boy, God, just take all this overwhelming feeling off my shoulders. I can't bear it anymore. Go to the Lord and just have a good old-fashioned prayer. He says, muse about it. You know what muse means? It means to consider or a source of inspiration. You know the last time, you know why you don't go to meditate? You know why you don't muse about some things? Because you're too busy on the television. You're too busy on the phone. You're too busy on social media. You're too busy doing everything else. You got too many irons in the fire. When's the last time you just sit around all day and prayed? Said, God, I thank you for saving my soul. I thank you for Concord Baptist Church. I thank you for all of those people down there. I thank you for saving my soul. I thank you for giving me peace. When's the last time you just prayed? Give it all to God. Mused over some things. Listen, as we come get a verse of invitation, hey, this altar is open. Whatever's on your heart, if you've been overwhelmed by the world, by the surfeiting, by the excessiveness. You've had too many irons in the fire, and I mean, it's just something one right after another. It's crushing down on you. You can't get no relief. I'm telling you, just focus on Jesus like Mary did. Don't be a Martha and just be busy all the time and try to make sure everything's right. Just give it to God and focus on Him. Meditate, go to Him in prayer, consider Him. Just make sure He's the source of your inspiration. Muse on His work. He says here in verse number 6, I stretch forth my hands unto thee, and my soul thirsteth after thee. You know what I believe he done? I really believe he just put his hands out. I mean, he's just stretching his hands to heaven. Can I be honest with you? As Miss Gayla plays, listen, I'm going to give you a little bit of my testimony, okay? A few years ago, 10 years ago, I'll give this testimony to the people when I was probably going to be hired here as your pastor. I give them my testimony. And I went from 200 pounds now, a little over now. And I went from 200 pounds to about 148 in a matter of months. I'm talking 2 months. I couldn't eat, and boy, I was just sick all the time. And man, I just hurt all the time. And boy, I knew God was telling me something. I didn't know what He was doing. He was working on me is what He was doing. He made me wave the white flag is what He was doing. I was surrendering. And I remember that I was just hurting. And boy, my stomach was hurting. It was tore up all the time. And I mean, I couldn't eat anything. The only thing that I could eat was a Little Debbie honey bun. I'm serious. Boy, those things are good. I still love those things. But I was down to about 145, 148 pounds. And I remember at night, I would lay in the bed at night. My wife would be asleep, and I would just be as sick as a dog. And I would just cry out. And literally, this is what I would do. Laying on my back, I just reach out. I was literally reaching my hands to heaven. Boy, I was praying my heart out. Listen, you're going to think I'm crazy. You're going to think, I don't know what you're going to think, don't really care. But you know what? When I poured my heart out and I just pulled just like David did here in verse number 4 or 6, that he stretched forth his hands, I done the same thing. And it's almost like I could feel a pair of hands just grab my wrist. So yeah, everything's going to be all right. Can I tell you, a few years everything was all right. Boy, there's still times I'm overwhelmed. There's still times that I still don't feel good. But I know one thing's for sure, that I can pour my heart out to Him and He can take it all off my shoulders. Listen, if you're overwhelmed this morning, you think it's never going to stop. Boy, you just want to fly like that dove. Fly away. I'm telling you, I'd run to Jesus right now. I'd run down here to this altar. I'd give Him everything. Because that is the solution.